Imagine
A podcast.
where time drifts slowly,
A podcast.
Where
Isaac.
carries you away.
So let me be clear. We tortured some folks.
Hey, hi, hello, it's Isaac. You're listening to Coexist Inc. Welcome back. Everybody's dying to know my opinion on the trans sports debate. And if you aren't aware of the current debate going on right now, it has to do with the WNBA and two former male NBA players who have done the paperwork, I guess it is, to sign up for the 2027 WNBA draft. One of them is Enes Kanter, famous CIA agent. I get into that a little bit on the episode. But if you're not familiar, tell me how. Tell me how you have not been inundated with the trans sport conversation, and teach me, because maybe I would like to not have to consider it. But I do. I consider it a lot. It's something that I think is interesting. And it's what is it with straight white men, cis-het men like myself, and our interest in trans women? Well, we'll get to the bottom of that on the episode with one of my favorite guests, Laura, who will explain to us how confused we are about trans gender politics and all the above. But it's not just gender that is interesting, especially when it comes to the human body in sports. For a period of time, I was really obsessed with Oscar Pistorius. If you recall, he was the South African Paralympian who was the first Paralympian who was able to compete in the normal Olympics. Is that what we call it? The able-bodied Olympics. It was in 2012, I believe. It was kind of scandalous at the time. It was the transhuman conversation. Should we allow someone with two prosthetic legs who was born without legs to compete in the able-bodied Olympics? I was fascinated by it. And it became even more fascinating with Oscar Pistorius and his personal story, because he murdered his girlfriend, and I think he's on his way out of prison or something like that. I still get Google alerts about him. Anyway, what was so interesting to me about allowing this person with prosthetic carbon fiber legs to compete was people were concerned about the fairness. Was it fair? Is it okay for someone with metal legs to compete against people with flesh legs? I think that it's a similar conversation to allowing trans women to compete. I think that you can rationalize it. You can say we can make this fair, right? We can make rules to make such a thing fair. What was funny with Oscar Pistorius was, the legs that they design are designed according to certain regulations. You can't just have whatever length of legs you want, because that can give someone a competitive advantage. So they do this weird math that determines how long your legs would have been had he had them. And in I think it was the Brazil Paralympics, he lost to a Brazilian Paralympic sprinter and claimed that his legs were unfairly long. What it is it's us trying to figure out what the human body actually is, what it means, what is quote unquote natural. And there's a lot of folly in that, because there really is no such thing. Because is it fair to compete with glasses? Couldn't you argue that that is a technological extension of the human body? Contacts, even the certain types of cleats you wear. So what is natural? Do you have to compete with your God-given naked body? Trans sports it's much more political. Obviously, there wasn't much politics involved with Oscar Pistorius, but it still follows the same ridiculous notions of fairness in sports and our obsession with fairness. And the conversation's great. Laura is amazing, as always. And I think that I'm very grateful that they came on to talk, because it's a kind of annoying conversation to have, except we talk about it for 2 hours. And at the end of the episode, I also interview a former NCAA swimmer named Anonymous, because she didn't really want to catch any potential heat and any potential employment issues in the near future for being on such an episode. But she talks about what it felt like to compete against trans athletes in a, I know technically the NCAA is amateur, but in a more professionalized, more institutionalized condition. So it's a great conversation. I hope you all like it and enjoy the show.
We get paid to have an opinion about everything. And this is something I don't care about. Every time I open up the rundown and see the WNBA in it, I feel like Jessica must feel every day. We have to do this again? Really? This again? Someone wore a T-shirt at a WNBA game? This isn't a news story. Okay? It doesn't matter.
Sounds
There
like
will
my
not be a
bachelorette
man in the WNBA. We don't even cover the NBA. Why are we covering the WNBA? This is ridiculous.
Love the haircut. Looking good.
Thank you.
Looking so good. I'm not a fan of mine. I was actually saying today that I look particularly Australian. Check this out. Look at this.
I mean, it's a vibe. I'm not anti-mullet. They work it here. I've been turned, you know?
I don't know about mine.
It looks cute. I don't know. I think it works. I think you need to go further though. I think you need to really
Rat
give
tail.
the mullet a full try. Yeah, actually, yeah, go for it.
I just want it long enough that someone can like really give it a nice yank. You know, that's what I want.
Yeah, but do you want a
Yeah.
rat tail for that? Because then it's just like it's more of like a
Ringing a bell.
like a door. Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
that one part, and you want someone to be able to get the whole thing. Because I feel
It's
like a rat
true.
tail is too concentrated.
I was actually inspired by Stephen Baldwin's hair in Biodome.
Excuse me, miss. If you were yogurt, would you be fruit at the bottom or stirred?
I really wanted his white dread bowl cut.
Oh,
I know.
the
I was like
fuck?
3rd grade, so
Yeah, I mean the desires of third graders are truly varied and far greater than what we can comprehend as adults.
speaking of the desires of 3rd graders. trans people. Would you let your 3rd grader transition? We'll get into that later.
God.
I really bullied Laura to come on this episode to talk about what we perhaps should not be talking about. I do think that there is a psyopiness to the trans conversation that comes up again and again and again and again.
Yep.
But guilty, I like talking about. It's interesting to me, and I think that most straight white men would say the same thing. We're kind of obsessed. So I think that before we fully get started,
Yeah.
we should give our, what I'm terming, I've just come up with this, our gendentials, our gender credentials.
Is that like a LinkedIn badge?
You tell me. I'm not allowed on LinkedIn.
Wait, what?
I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I just don't go on. It's enough. Too much social media. My gender credentials, because some people, we unfortunately do not have a trans representative on this episode to talk about
Depends
trans
on
women
how
in
you
sports. We'll get into
define
that. This will be part of your
transness,
gender
but-
credentials. This is for your upcoming gendentials. Slow down. Take your time. Hold on. If everyone wasn't already aware, am a painfully heterosexual, straight, white, tall man. And I know we know how you feel about tall people, but
Yeah.
your tall racism. So everybody must know how I feel about trans women in sports and trans women and men in general. So I think that's a given. Everyone knows that by now. Laura, what are your gendentials?
Well, let me just say, tall people are like pugs. They're cute, but they die easy and quick, and maybe we shouldn't make them. But no, I am non-binary, so I go by they them pronouns. I'm a little lazy about it. Just
What does that
because
mean?
I just don't like having the conversation a lot of the time. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
exhausting.
sure I am too out there all the time. I think it's one of those things where when I did come out, I guess. Sometimes I also just forgot to tell some of my friends, and they were just like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
you
that
never
makes
told me. I had to infer through Dorian always referring to you as they, and that it became clear.
yes. And
I was
it's
like,
just
oh, thanks for making me look like a fucking non-ally asshole, Laura, for a year.
well, anything I can do to help the cause of
Yeah.
the anti-cis-het program that this clearly is. This is all about you guys and making you guys feel bad.
I forgot
That's-
to call myself cis. Thank you for reminding me that I'm a sissy.
Oh yeah. But no, it's just one of those things where when I finally figured out that that's a category that was out there, it was like, oh, finally, there's a name for this thing that's been going on my whole life. And
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why I personally, and like everyone has their own approach to this. I'm not prescribing anything, but it's just kind of like, it's quite clear if you get to know me. It's quite obvious. I've always had this feeling. It's a bit jarring. Currently, I'm on a course where they don't do the whole like, let's all say our pronouns thing. So a lot of people automatically refer to me as she, and it is a little like, who? What? But like I think it's kind of yeah, I don't think I take that much offense as long as I haven't like clarified ahead of time. And
Someone's
typically
not doing it
there's
maliciously, of course.
yeah. Personally, that's
dated
for me.
I dated someone who was non-binary. They were non-binary for maybe like the 3 or 4 years in our relationship, and then they became she. And it was very funny because finally my parents had learned how to say they them, because it's a muscle, it takes practice
It
to
is.
learn. And finally, once my parents figured it out, she was like, "Oh, I'm not they them anymore," and that was
They
very
must have
funny.
loved that.
And for her, it was very interesting to me to talk to her about it, because I'm a cis straight white man. I love talking about these things. And her identity was almost like a principle, almost like being a vegan. Like it was a proper choice. It was a principle. And because she was studying the sciences, she pointed out this study that showed that identical papers, if one's male and one's female, the male paper is always graded higher, even though it's identical. And so I think for her in the sciences, it was about transcending that sort of inbuilt misogyny. And I was like, cool, I get it. Yeah, like that. I totally understand that. And we don't have to talk about it too much beyond that. I mean, I just accepted it. The most annoying part was having to call her my partner, which was very cringe to me, because I was fine with it, but I know it's become this thing where everyone hates everyone who calls someone their partner.
Yeah, God, I mean, I do feel like that sometimes is a lot of the trans debate that you hear from like outside of the community that's actually affected by it. Is like, oh my God, all these little annoying things that I have to do. Isn't this such a burden upon me?
It's good if you're OCD, I guess, or bad, one or the other.
But I do think, yeah, there's a bit of a fixation on the trappings of it rather than the actual experience of it. And I think that that's partially because it's what's most acceptable, but also partially because I think there's a certain lack of curiosity or interest about the lived experience, because it's often something that you can't relate to. I mean, I think there's parts of my experience I can kind of see in other experiences, people's experiences of transness. Like there's a lot that just I can listen to, I can understand, but it's not something I've lived through. And there is a certain amount of just accepting that you're going to try to understand someone and it's not something that you just have an intuition of. And I think that's the thing a lot of people balk at, honestly.
Do people balk at you identifying as trans? I mean, does that even figure? It obviously doesn't figure into your like daily life, but I imagine in certain circles people are a little bit gatekeepy.
In terms of what?
whether you can identify as trans, whether that's like something you're accepted as trans.
I you know, God, I feel like this is like inner tiny weird politics because there's a lot of niche stuff, right? Because there's definitely some non-binary people who go more for like gender abolition or are kind of have issues with this idea of an essentialism of gender at all, like any felt sense of gender. And there is a bit of a question as to how accepting of like trans people's experiences that is either binary or non-binary trans people. But I don't think I've ever really felt excluded from a space. No, I don't think I have. It's
So
never
do
really
you
been an issue.
identify as trans? I mean, this is where I feel like it gets kind of, there isn't like a universal general trans experience either, I guess.
And yeah, I do think that's part of it, is this attempt to categorize and label things that I think is often actually more externally imposed than internally imposed. I do think there's a desire to like have a name for your experience and understand your experience and be able to create a community around it. And I totally get that. But I think there's a lot of nuance in the reality of it. I mean, if you define trans as, you know, not being the gender or not identifying with the gender you are defined or categorized at birth, then yes, I suppose. Honestly, the question of whether or not I'm trans is not really a question that's been very relevant in my life. I think, you know, I've sought out a lot of queer community, and that's just kind of been enough. And it's not really been that much of a question beyond that.
So as a trans person, how have you have you kept up with this latest trans sports situation? Because it seems to be a favorite, especially of conservatives. I mean, Donald Trump says there are two things that are everything, right? Everything computer and everybody trans. Like those are the he sees the world becoming all computers and all trans. And he might be right about one thing or two. But he brings it up frequently as a kind of knee-jerk response when he's losing steam. I don't know if you've seen him do this in his speeches, where it's just like, he's wandering and eventually like hating trans women, especially in sports, like kind of centers him. It brings him back to homeostasis when he's ranting. And the latest drama is in the WNBA, where it began with this one white blonde lady named Sophie Cunningham, who's become a darling of conservatives because they love to map on their racist bullshit on sports euphemistically whenever they can. But now two former NBA players, Enes Kanter Freedom, that's his official last name, Freedom, a Turkish national, Turkish American now, I guess, and a former NBA player who only played, I think, like a couple of games because he had an overwhelming fear of flying and it killed his career. Like he could not deal with flying, so he didn't ever have a proper career. Named Royce White. They have both signed up for the 2027 WNBA draft because there isn't enough, I guess, specific rules around the WNBA eligibility. It's simply, do you identify as a woman? Like that's it. Are you a woman? That and then that's fine. So they are quote unquote exploiting this loophole, which isn't even a loophole. It's just, I don't know. I compared it to Airbud, where they're saying there's no rules that a dog can't play basketball. It's like, yeah, but everyone knows a dog can't play basketball. It's kind of the same with these guys. It's just like, you're not sincerely trans. Everybody knows you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. But so it's all very silly, but it is in the news and I'm reading about it. And so have you, as a trans person, kept up with it, and how does it make you feel?
I've I've kind of seen it in the background. It's just been around. It's like it doesn't even feel particularly new because it's been around so fucking long, and it just feels like
It
they're
does, yeah.
they're kicking it about again, and it's kind of like the eternal return, like just the demon in Nietzsche just going, show me your genitals over and over and over again. Um, I honestly think my main concern about it, my main frustrations with it come more as someone who played women's sports and
Mhm.
actually really enjoyed playing sports and really enjoyed athletics. And I've got a lot of opinions about that. And I guess that more forms my opinion because like someone in the queer community, it's just kind of like this isn't really that much of an issue. There aren't that many people in sports. In fact, that's a huge problem. I think there's this chilling quality where all of this kind of public judgment at a high level and kind of moral panic really dissuades, trans people from, joining their local footy club or even being comfortable going to the gym and just moving their bodies.
Mhm.
And that makes me quite sad. Um, it just seems so silly. I think I'm having a hard time entering into it because it just seems so ridiculous to me. There's a lot of questions about, what actually changes when you start taking hormones like after puberty. And there's a lot of different data around that. There is a difference definitely skeletally when you go through puberty with different hormones.
Mhm.
How different that is within gender and without gender, like you can look at those statistics in a bunch of different ways. There's not a lot of agreement about what it does to VO2 max. Some studies would actually say that trans women have reduced lung capacity compared with cis women. There's shifts come in pretty quickly in terms of hemoglobin, your body's capacity to carry oxygen. That changes pretty quickly dependent on hormones. And then if you think about it, the transition process is really stressful. Like it's not easy physically or mentally, and that will impact your performance. So while I do see people's point that there again are some differences that happen earlier developmentally. It's just like, why isn't this just a case by case basis that is handled by the sports federation themselves? Like, why isn't
Well,
it just that? Why can't we let
yeah.
it?
Because it happens so infrequently. There are several cases of intersex athletes.
Mm,
Caster Semenya, the South African runner, who was banned and unbanned and banned and unbanned, and that's the thing. There's a lot of politics, right? It's not particularly scientific. It seems
no.
these determinations, and then you have I can't remember her name, but she was, I believe, a Lebanese boxer who won the Olympics
Yeah.
recently, and she kicked everyone's ass. I mean, she is a specimen, and I think it was the Russian Boxing Federation, because Russia is pretty homophobic and transphobic. We're like,
Incredibly.
no, but this woman was married, like she has a husband back in, I believe it's Lebanon. I could be wrong. It could be Syria. Uh, but so even when these federations determine these things, it's it's subject to change, right? It's not set in stone, especially
Oh
as the
yeah.
technology evolves. I think everybody agrees that just because Royce White is wearing a wig, and it's
Mm.
funny, he keeps saying people are dead naming him, but he clearly doesn't know what dead naming means because he's still Royce White. I don't under
He can only be dead named. That's a strong
yeah.
choice.
Um, And then Enes Kanter, he did this some stupid fucking sit down, like it was a serious interview, but it's clearly staged. Uh, and he's giving this like sincere spiel about why he's doing this, and it's clear it's just like, no, you are, like, what a fucking asshole. And I am encouraged that most people are look at this, and even fucking Jesse Waters, like Fox News, Tucker Carlson Light, Diet Tucker Carlson, Jesse Waters is like, I don't fucking care. Like I do not care about this, which is encouraging. But at the same time, when I do talk to women about the whole trans women in sports thing, they kind of like grin and bear it a bit, I think, especially if they're of the liberal variety. But I do feel like there is a level of discomfort, and they do feel like Leah Thomas, for instance, wasn't fair to them in a lot of their minds, even though
didn't Leah Thomas place like 4th or 5th? Like she wasn't even on the podium.
So she was I think it was 2022 NCAA D1 swimmer.
Oh, yeah.
And she did. The outrage began because I believe she placed first in the 500-yard meter freestyle.
Yeah.
But then she tied for 5th in the 200-yard or meter, whatever it is, freestyle with Riley Gaines, and that's where Riley Gaines got all of her. That's where her career began, because she tied for 5th. They gave Leah Thomas a 5th place trophy, which is like, first of all, why are you giving out 5th place trophies? Like, when did we start doing that? It's so stupid. And Riley Gaines was given a 6th place trophy to hold in the photo as a placeholder because they didn't have multiple 5th place trophies, because I guess it's quite rare. I don't know. But she made a whole stink about it. And now she has this massive influencer career where they parade her around. She's a spokesperson or affiliate person with this clothing company I've just learned about called XXXY, like sports clothing. Yeah. I know.
Like, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, like, if
there's
I
a
support fetish wear in all of its forms, and if that's what really gets you off, I guess.
But yeah, people saw Leah Thomas, and when you see Leah Thomas, I mean, she is I like the boxer. She is a specimen. I mean, she is, I think,
what a
6'1".
term.
That's just how is it okay to talk about athletes like
Well,
that?
I mean, I think it's an interesting medicalized term for like trans people, or like anyone who you think kind of is outside of the norms of gender, like as this almost like
I would call
biomedical case study. And
so I
but
guess
I'm not
I
really
would call like Shaquille O'Neal a specimen, or I'd probably say he's a freak, but I feel like saying a freak is a little bit harsher. I wouldn't call a trans athlete a freak, but I'd call Shaquille O'Neal a freak.
Yeah, I think it's probably just because I was trying to read up on this, because I was I really didn't want to do a disservice to the topic, and I got into some of the early human sexuality studies in the Weimar Republic, and I didn't realize how much his research was based off of human zoos. And I think that's just kind of like fresh in my mind, that even the even kind of this attempt to like prove homosexuality or like different presentations of gender where, you know, normal human traits kind of have this strange link with this biomedical categorization that takes a very particularly removed form.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, in what way? I mean, I think it kind of comes back to this issue of like, why isn't this decided person by person? And the other kind of interesting, like, fetishistic quality here is like, so why weren't we looking at the 4 women who came in ahead? And what, biological
nobody can name
advantages
them.
they had. Yeah, no one can fucking name them. I've definitely swum against or competed against people who are way better than me. And I've also thought it was unfair that they got to compete against me with their better bodies. I think that's really unfair. I should be allowed to win inherently. Also, I'm 5'4". And I love basketball. Do you know how fucking heartbreaking that is? Do you know how sad
Find your local Filipino basketball court and have at it, dude. They have a blast.
Yeah, but then again, like, how fair is that? But like all these, it's this attempt to like find this one factor that you can control for, that you can play with. And I totally understand that as a means of producing knowledge. And I understand that within this tradition. It's just, it doesn't necessarily translate well to social interpersonal organization, right? That kind of idea of like singular categorization as a source of like knowledge and being doesn't necessarily work well when it comes down to negotiating lived experience. And sometimes it really removes you from the body that you're looking at. There's this kind of distance that comes in, where you are able to divest yourself, or at least pretend that you divest yourself of your kind of personal prejudices and wants and desires, and you get to take up this perspective of examining something else from what you can, at least for a moment, because of their freakishness or difference, pretend is, you know, purely scientific or purely about the oddity. And I think people enjoy that. I think people enjoy feeling that distance and power over others to some degree or another. I don't think that's necessarily a completely bad thing. I don't really put any moral coding on that, actually. I think we all do it a bit. But I do think it's something that goes kind of unacknowledged. And I do hear it a lot in the trans debate, where people kind of take this position of, well, let's just be rational here. And it's like, well, from what perspective? I do think it's a desire to feel that sense of objectivity, or that pretense of objectivity, while acting on your own prejudices.
I guess just because sports are so inherently bounded that this is why the debate happens here. This is why I kind of can understand where you want to just kind of, it's harder to explain to conservatives, I guess, or even like liberal wine moms, you know? I feel like the purity of the body in sports matters greatly. And there's a lot of pretense there too, that it isn't, they aren't all cyborgs already. And they're taking some incredible supplements, or getting some advantage technologically through training or nutrition or
crazy
whatever.
Recovery methods. Like, some of those recovery methods are wild.
Yeah. But
then like the social apparatus of having all that time, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
But we still like have to have this idea of the pure athletic body. And this is why there's so many elaborate anti-doping policies. And some for good reason, I guess. Like, it would just offer another advantage to the richer countries, but they already have it. They're just better at masking it. Either way, the public needs to believe that these bodies are pure and natural. And I think that the idea of a gendered body kind of plays into that as well, which is why we love it when our artists and our rock stars take drugs. You know, we expect them to take these performance enhancing supplements. Like, watching Jimi Hendrix fucking go nuts on acid on his guitar, I'm just like, dude, I'm gonna do acid now because of that. It's like encouraged almost, right? Whereas I think that in the sporting world, no, you cannot corrupt the body. It's meant to be the most natural state, the most purest state that the human body can be. Because otherwise, you can ask, like, what's the point? You know, I could watch a jet ski race Michael Phelps, and the jet ski would win every single time. You know, we don't want to necessarily watch cyborgs compete. We want to watch like this idea of the real natural human body. And so I think that with trans women in sports, that anti-doping kind of idea, the anti-drug idea, the natural idea is mapped on to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm just thinking about the Michael Phelps analogy, and I would love to watch two jet skis race. But I guess the thing about the jet ski and Michael Phelps is the advantage is too obvious, so it's not as entertaining. while I think I would have a kind of similar. No, actually, do I want to watch Michael Phelps race a 5-year-old? Kind of, but just
But
just for the fucking plot,
right. So but that's exactly the point, though, I think, and I think that's why like Enes Kanter gets to 33 years old. I mean, he did leave. He left the NBA unceremoniously because he became an outspoken critic against China and was always like ranting and raving about the Uyghur genocide. And so teams stopped picking him up, but he wasn't like a superstar or nothing. But anyway, he could still hoop. And if Enes Kanter were to go into the WNBA, it would be unfair, right? I think that's objective, I think.
Yeah, and okay, if we're talking about sports in this direction, and it's kind of funny because I'm thinking about the brief time that I spent bodybuilding, and like I was doing it totally natty, right? I wasn't taking anything, but I was still eating an insane amount of food. My entire life was just built around the gym, and then I also naturally build muscle really fucking fast.
Ectomorph.
Yeah, I guess. But it's kind of one of those things where I wouldn't have gotten into it from this perspective of just like not having the opportunity to eat a bunch of food and spend a bunch of time at the gym and being I think antisocial enough that I was willing to do that. And then also just already having a natural tendency to build muscle. So it's like there's already these disproportionate starting points, and what I was doing to my body was totally fucking unnatural. And I'm not saying that from like a gender perspective. I'm saying that from like, you shouldn't be eating the same meal 4 times a day plus protein shakes. That's fucking weird. Like, and the way people would get so into like training tiny specific parts of their body, like there's so much craft to it. And when I look at like also like the particular training for the NBA, the particular type of like short fiber training versus long, like short twitch muscle fiber training versus long twitch, the way that they're working with their ability to do plyometrics, like you're building the body as a very particular machine. There is not that much pure or natural about it. Even when you take the drugs out of it, there really isn't. And I think there's this kind of like, yeah, there's a kind of natural starting point. You have to be able, your body needs to have whatever like genetic predisposition to get you in the door. But then after that, it is so much fucking work. And that's part of why we love sports, right? Because it's not just this story of this one person who has a pure and beautiful body and is able to like float across the field. It's the training, it's the effort, it's the ability to work as a team, it's the ability to plan, it's the ability to think these things through, like in terms of strategy, that we love in sports. So I think I'd push back a bit against the idea that there is anything about the pure body there. I'm not sure that's true.
I think that it most manifests in the very narrow, the very two-dimensional track and field Olympic type sports where they are fractions of a second. It is just this. It doesn't have the dynamics. The infinite dynamics of team sports with a ball that sometimes does miraculous things that you can't explain or can't know. But I do think that's different.
But then again, we're like narrowing the definition further and further and further to a form of sport that like almost everyone will participate in as a spectator. Like outside of like high school track and field, you're not really competing in this.
Well, I think that why I don't think it's as big of a deal if trans people were to, for instance, show up to a pickup basketball game and want to play. I think that it would be generally, I mean, accepted as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
However, I think that when obviously there is money, career, professionalism involved, and regulations are passed down on us from like actual authorities instead of the kind of ethereal authority of recreational sports, it's quite different. And so I think in the case of the WNBA, with these players who, again, there's only been one trans athlete in the WNBA, and it was a trans man who actually transitioned throughout their career in the WNBA. But which is interesting because like, could he identified as a man, although said it was an evolving thing for him, but they still allowed him to participate in the WNBA, even though he identified as a man, but had was born a woman. So it this happened in like 2020, and nobody really gave a shit. It was fine.
No one gives a shit about trans men. This always fucking happens in the debate.
Yeah.
This always fucking happens. Like,
so
because
what is it then about the trans woman? Is it just misogyny? Is that it? Like, what is it about the trans woman that makes it so different?
I
so
fear
intense?
this shit is just so fucking boring. Like, I think that's the problem. And I actually kind of want to ask you some more personal questions about this when you're ready for it, because I am curious about it. But yeah, it is just misogyny. And a lot of trans men are kind of erased because it's like, well, of course you want to be a man. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, of course you want to perform masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Who wouldn't? And I think there's something in a incredibly misogynistic society, which, you know, we're in, that God, there's a lot of fucking stuff there. I think there's a certain kind of like there's more of a social taboo about someone wanting to basically let go of masculinity. I think there's more suspicion around that. I think women and femininity is forced to bear the burden of sexuality in a way so that people assume that that's sexual. In the same way, like, it's almost assumed of, you know, some people, some trans mass people, that it's purely practical, almost like what you were talking about before, that it's just this like political choice. It's almost always assumed that the desire to become a woman is inherently sexual, because like what else are women there for?
That's like the autogynephilia stuff that, you know, the conservatives like to talk about.
Yeah, and I have heard, you know, the argument of like, oh, you know, trans women like imagine themselves as women, you know, when they're aroused. And I've heard the argument that, yeah, I would say most women imagine themselves as women in their sexual fantasies. Like, it's not really the gotcha moment that you think it is.
I imagine I'm an alien watching myself have sex.
And that's fun. I'm more on that team. I think that's great. I think there's a fantastic attitude towards masturbation as to like, how inanimate and strange can I get this and still come? It's a great card game.
I think there is like an inherent suspicion when men transition into women, especially if you are not a beautiful trans woman. I think that I've heard people say that they're like inherently predatory, and other things. And while that, like, there are of course the cases of this, right? We can't pretend like it doesn't happen, but again, it's just like, with what actual frequency does it happen, especially compared to just like normal sexual degeneracy amongst men and women.
Women are weird little freaks. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, they're fucking weird little freaks. And I think this idea that a trans woman is freakish because she's trans rather than just a freakish woman, as many women are, like, it's weird how little we kind of clock how sexually predatory women can also be. And they fucking can be. And I think that's...
Oh yeah, they're horny. They're
oh yeah,
way hornier than guys are actually.
Horny and weird and fucking weird.
Yeah. Seems like fun. I don't know. I'm jealous sometimes.
Yeah, and maybe you should be. Like I think there's a lot that women can do. But I think there's also this, I don't know, there's so many possibilities here. I feel like you'd always have to talk to someone about their idea of gender. I think there's just such a deep mistrust of men. And I think what also comes up, and something that I actually had to work through myself in therapy, and I think a lot of people have to work through, is this quality where you blame who men are in terms of the gender category for the violence. And I'm not saying that the kind of social permission that comes up when you're at the top of the gender hierarchy and you're encouraged to express yourself violently, I'm not saying that that doesn't exist. But I remember being challenged. Like, you say all these things about men, and it lets you let them off the hook for being bad people. Because you can just think of the category of men as like problematic and shitty. And you don't need to face the fact that these are people making shitty decisions of their own free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have like so many deeply lovely men in my life who I absolutely adore, who are, fabulous, caring, kind, nurturing people.
Oh, thank you.
And like, I love hanging out with them. And I think that I hear it in like cis women. I hear it in non-cis. Like I hear it around this idea that men are just bad. And I think that's something we're forced to challenge when we deal with trans women, of like, what makes a man?
Mm-hmm.
And what makes this kind of abusive image of a man that we have? Is it a penis? Is it testosterone? Or is it the social permission and conditioning and the availability of that kind of violence and the kind of condoning of that violence that we have
All
as
of
a
the
society?
above.
And facing how socially constructed it is, and facing how much of a fucking choice it is, rather than someone's penis whispering to them, going like, beat the bitch. Like, that's not fun. That's not fun to actually have to realize how much someone chose to abuse you. That's shit. I think that's a huge part. And I think men don't want to acknowledge it either. I think it's very fucking convenient for a lot of men to be like, I'm just a man and this is how men are. And it means they also get to avoid how much they've been hurt by the men in their lives and misogyny as a whole.
They should consider transcending themselves.
Oh God. And I've got another point here in terms of physical conditioning and like childhood conditioning, because like one of the, and I'm not saying there isn't sexual dimorphism in human beings. I'm not fucking saying that. But we discount how much of the early physiological differences between men and women have to do with social conditioning. And how much we discourage little girls from moving around and using their bodies and running around, because from a really early age, you're taught that your body is this source of sexual danger and vulnerability, and that you shouldn't move it in certain ways. And you are discouraged from playing around and taking risks. And that does impact long-term muscle development. Those habits do impact your health in the long run. I mean, it's one of the reasons why like Pilates is so fucking popular. It's not that it's like an easier thing to do. Believe me, it's painful as hell. But women are so fucking dissuaded from building muscle or even eating enough to have that normal development. Like, you are fucking starved by patriarchy. You are kept fucking small. And we don't talk about that when we're talking about all these, hormonal differences, because that's a lot more fucking uncomfortable. And you'd have to face how much violence is done to women basically from the beginning of their lives in terms of their capacity to find joy and movement and power in their bodies.
But I guess this is true. And I would argue that Caitlin Clark would absolutely smoke Bob Cousy. Like, I think if you had a time machine, you sent her back to the 1950s NBA, she'd be the best, you know? She'd absolutely be the best player. And that just speaks to more women playing and developing. And even though Caitlin Clark could not hold a candle to any player in the NBA in a strict sort of one-on-one sense, she's a better shooter than I think a lot of NBA players might be. But I still think like she wouldn't survive against even like I think a lot of D1 male college players. And that is part of the reality of the dimorphism today. And the thing is like, that's okay. That's not a bad thing that Caitlin Clark isn't better than any NBA player, because people still watch college basketball. Why do people watch college basketball? Why bother? Like when you could watch the NBA where they're significantly better than every college basketball team. The point is not that they're the best, right? It's that it's an entertainment thing, and it's okay that women have their own sport. And I guess to bring it back to Leah Thomas and why people felt it was unfair, and there was a lot of distrust around her participation. I think people did immediately believe that she was doing it for narcissistic, nefarious reasons, right? So she wanted to win. She wasn't good enough as a man, and so she wanted to win, and she wanted to become a celebrity. It's all conjecture, of course, but I think a lot of people saw her, and she, even if you saw Leah Thomas with that same body as a man, you'd be like, that's a very athletic looking person right there. Like incredibly broad shoulders, which all swimmers have, like women, all women, they're supposed to. But I think a lot of people saw that, and I think it was just so visually striking to them that they're like, oh yeah, that's not fair. It's not fair that she does this. Now, again, she did place fifth, tied for fifth, so she didn't smoke everybody in every single competition. And then it begs the question, or not begs the question, but it asks the question, would a trans woman ever be allowed to win? Is it okay we'll let trans women compete, but you guys can't place higher than fifth, right? The second you guys place first, sorry, there's something wrong here. I think at some point people will have to accept that trans women will like win at sports, in women's sports occasionally. And now if they start winning every single time, then I think we can like reevaluate things and be like, all right, there's some that's it's no longer an anomaly. Now it's like the norm.
Yes, when we're in the dystopian trans-dominated sports universe, maybe we need to have some question. But that ain't fucking happening now.
No,
and that
but
isn't.
I think the conservative argument is that when you create these incentives, when money is involved. Now, the WNBA just renegotiated
all
their
that
collective
money
bargaining
and
agreement.
glamour in women's sports.
Okay,
yeah,
but
that huge pile.
But I think this is why this is happening now. The WNBA is actually at its most popular, and Sophie Cunningham, for instance, who is not a good player, but she's become again like a racist euphemism for white America. She. A racist golem, I should say. She is now, she just signed a new contract for $665,000 in a year, which still pales in comparison to like NBA players, but that's as much as she made, as more than she made in her previous 7 years in the league. So there is money, and the conservatives will say this, especially when it comes to like high school and then college sports, where it's just like, these people, it's so expensive to go to college now. So all some guy has to do who's not good enough can identify as a woman, play in this team, and then get a scholarship to go to some good college. That's the argument they're making, that there is this incentive.
Ever fucking so let me just take you through the kind of setup that I keep on seeing here in what you said. Also is like there's this great visual contrast, and it triggers these elaborate fantasies, and then something must be done. There's this kind of like, wow, I can really spot this difference. When has that ever fucking happened? How many colleges are just kind of I just find it kind of boggles the mind in terms of like also going through that process of transitioning, because it feels like when people talk about it, it's like this kind of like, okay, I'll just go into the magical gender switch machine and I'll come out with like big eyelashes and like huge titties. And it's
if Enes Kanter chops his penis off, then I say let's do it. Let's see how committed you are. But
you don't even go for the penis you need to keep the penis for the I mean, that's just the thing. It's like, it would be the balls first. It's an orchidectomy. I can't remember the exact term, but anyway,
all of it. I mean,
the practicalities of like, not even everyone goes for surgery.
Gender is stored in the balls. You're right.
It is one person's balls, and when we find that person, God help me. No, but that's the thing, is it's like, it's such a fucking long process. It's so long. And like, oftentimes, and it's kind of funny because I'm in Victoria in Australia, and it's a pretty libertine environment when it comes to self-ID and access to hormones. And it's not like we're seeing this crazy behavior of like trying to, of people just willy-nilly taking hormones and doing crazy shit to manipulate or game the system. And maybe that's more of a factor of the incredibly high pressure of the capitalist environment in the States and the kind of neo-feudalist capitalist environment where people are expected to begin preparing their bodies to be sold from a very young age to gain entry into the workforce. And I would argue that's not trans people causing that. I would argue that just because they're visible, they become this space where you can articulate all your fears about it while projecting it onto a different enough body that the fantasy stays far away from any reality. And you can keep all your very real fears about how exploitative the world is and just plaster it on to someone who you see as other. And just, if you regulate their bodies, you could regulate your fears and your fantasies. But like, transitioning is hard. It's not something you can like flippantly do. I think particularly in the States where there's such like a limitation to healthcare, hormones take a while to affect you. You also don't really want to be doing those without blood tests as well, and like checking the levels. It takes a while for the levels to get right. Social transition is a whole nother process. There's a lot of like, non-hormonal, non-surgical interventions that people also engage with, like voice training, like, just figuring out how to walk, how to be in that body, how to dress themselves, like what kind of woman they are or man. It's not, whenever I hear conservatives talk about it, it just feels like there's this kind of instantaneous flip rather than a fucking hard process that weeds you the fuck out if you're not into, like, if it's not really what you need to do for yourself, you're not gonna fucking do it. Like, I don't get this fantasy of like people will just do it. Like,
well,
no.
I think there's like a kind of cynical sort of interpretation of a lot of people's identities, and that I think especially because I think there were some like quote unquote alarming studies done, polls of like Gen Z or Gen Alpha and how many of them identify as trans now, and they made the graph look like it was going way the hell up. And the thing is, it's like, oh, you're asking like kids on the internet, like what are they trans? And you just I guess the thing is, you have to take someone's word for it, right? And I think that's the kind of technicality that these two NBA players are trying to get away with. Is just that I can just say I am, and you must accept me because I say so. And I think that that is an interesting component of trans identity, although I don't know like how welcoming it would be. But the identity is both like simultaneously hyper localized. It is a individual internal thing that you say you are or type that you are on the internet, and then what happens at large amongst in the community, like who's accepted, who's not. It seems more like cis people are the ones who are determining who is and who isn't, more so than the trans community. But at the same time, it's like how, because it's you have to take someone at their word for it. That's what I think conservatives like to do, this sort of like tricky rationalization, facts and logic thing.
Yeah, it just, I will say within that, I'm not going to say every trans person is fucking fabulous. And you definitely have like absolutely weird, like conservative trans people. They do exist. And you do have some who are like, unless you're like completely unclockable, like
Right.
don't fucking do it. And they're like very into the binary. And they're very into this idea of like you have to like completely disappear into the other gender and this naturalized idea of gender. There are people who will fucking judge you for not being, not passing well enough. Like there's still judgment. People are still, there's shitty people everywhere. But I think you are kind of getting to this thing of like, it's both completely internal and also incredibly external, right? Because it's the cultural recognition. There's this idea that like, okay, gender is culturally constructed, but also internally felt. And that's a kind of jarring contradiction, I think, for a lot of people who want it to either be like exclusively internal and naturalized or like exclusively externalized. And, I'm not sure I have a particularly good answer for that, except that when I have known my friends who I've known before and after their transition, there is this weird quality of just like, oh, you're just more yourself now. And I don't know how else to describe it. It's just, oh, this is just who you are, and you've just become more of that. And it's quite striking because it's something you almost can't articulate. And it is dependent on these like broad social mores as well. I think that's an uncomfortable place to be, of like it's not quite constructed and it's not quite real,
Right.
but it exists nonetheless.
And it is just, I guess, they are these two basketball players, and anybody else, anyone in the conservative media ecosystem who makes jokes like, well, I identify as a attack helicopter or something like that. It's just like, but you don't actually. And
I mean, yeah, I'd love to see them like follow through on that actually.
Yeah, I'll open your mouth and I'll pour diesel gas in your fucking mouth, and we'll see how much of a helicopter you feel. But I get it too, because I have the same sort of like cynicism when I see certain people. I'm like, oh, you're trans? Like, okay. It's kind of like the same way I see someone who says they are like they believe in God, and I'm like, okay, do you though? Like, how can I prove you don't exactly, other than like these kinds of like very judgmental, cynical, distrustful notions I might have of a person and the reasons why they're doing it. Like, I see that in myself, but at the same time, it's just like they can say that they are, the same way someone can say, well, I believe in God, and I have no way of actually proving that you don't.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
No, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why one of the best indicators for having relatively positive views about trans people is having trans people in your life. Like, I think when you know someone and you see their lived experience, it just becomes quite obvious and quite simple in a way that it isn't from a distance. And I do think you're speaking to a kind of reason why it's becoming more of an issue right now, where we are living in a very fucking low trust society. I think a lot of kind of our social networks and our sense of connection and our sense of trust in one another has been totally exploited for capital gain, in a variety of ways, from like scammers to social media. And I think there might be a certain rage at trans people, in this idea of like, how dare you expect me to believe you and have trust in you as a person when no one believes me or has trust in me, where there are all these systems set up based on the premise that I'm going to, lie and be exploitative, when there's like no level of kind of human recognition, because of all of this massive capitalistic exploitation.
Right.
Why do you get that human recognition? What the fuck is so special about your humanity, that you get to kind of stand behind it and to say, no, this is important? I think that's beyond misogyny. That's part of the rage. I think people are really mad at the idea that trans people have a sense of self.
That they, I think, have a much more tangible journey of discovery than the rest of us do. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
which
know
is
what I'm becoming. You know?
which is ridiculous.
I'm a podcaster, dude.
Yeah.
That's what I identify as.
Because it's not like that's, I don't want to say it's like all suffering, because I think I've heard a lot of people talk about, the real beauty and a lot of wonder and a lot of what they got from their experience transitioning. So I don't want to say it's all suffering, because I don't think it is. But I think the idea of like, oh, you've just decided you're so special and, you're in this kind of entitled fantasy, totally ignores what the day-to-day experience of going through like social or medical transition is like. And also, like, I mean, how much of our lives isn't fantasy? Like, come the fuck on. I think that's the other idea, is like, oh, because your life is so fucking real, your sense of self and your existence is so fucking like natural and normal. Like, come on. And I do think that's also a part of the defensiveness of like trying to single out trans people as maybe this hyper visible place where you could challenge the fantasy at the core of all of our existences. Like, you're so much more of a fantasist, so I don't need to deal with how much I'm not actually a man. How much I know I don't measure up to my own idea of masculinity, how much I know I have to like pinch and push myself to fit into these ideals, how much I'm dissatisfied with my own life and I fucking hate it. And I force myself to like go through the goddamn grind. How much none of this feels like it fits, and how much it stings every day to have to wake up and force my way through it. I think that projection is, yeah, I think that's a huge reason why there's that rage. And there's this idea that I think also there's a jealousy of queer identity, and that to some degree it does provide you with community. And there's a sense of like, why the fuck should you people get it when I feel so isolated and alone?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's born out of that kind of bitterness. Because again, I think that if you don't approve of it or whatever, you don't like it, like you literally should just say, "Oh, whatever, I don't care." Like walk away. Like what? So that's why I think sports seems to be the one area in particular, and bathrooms, sports and bathrooms, which I guess are like there's like an overlap there, is the place where this debate keeps occurring, the eternal return, like you said.
Yeah.
And I don't know how maybe the conservatives are pressing the button too hard and people are going to be gassed and not fucking care. But then again, like nothing new under the sun. It returns as farce. It never goes away fully, I guess, unless something else changes, something else greater changes. Now, I think that the WNBA is going to likely be forced to clarify what a woman is. And that is unfortunate because it wasn't a problem. There weren't actual trans women, right? And that's the thing is like we all know Enes Kanter is not actually a trans woman, but like they use the exact same language that an actual trans person would use when a conservative denies them their identity.
Yeah.
And it's just cruel at that point. I mean, it's just not sincere. But anyway, they will likely be forced to make some sort of ruling the same way that the Olympics does, the same way the NCAA does, where it's just like, okay, in order to be a woman in the WNBA, you must have had taking hormones for this long, do this, do that, do that. And so it all becomes hypothetical, I think, because I don't think that you're going to be confronted with that many trans women all of a sudden trying to play basketball, which is something you have to do from a very, very young age. Like very few people can just start playing basketball in their, late teens or whatever, and then become a phenom. But the funny thing too, we talked about this before, that like you were saying earlier in the show, that there are like some factors in puberty that increase bone density, VO2 max, et cetera, and we're learning and measuring as we collect more data from trans people about like how the body changes, how it doesn't. The actual like minute, they're very small advantages, but they become much more present. We become much more aware of them in like high performance sports. So the solution then would be for younger and younger people to transition, right? I think it would kind of backfire in conservatives because they hate this idea. They really hate the idea of children taking hormones or getting procedures or whatever. And in my fantasy, I'm fantasizing because I don't have fucking kids and I probably never will. But in my fantasy where I have a child and this child identifies as trans and wants to transition, I think in my mind, the fantasy I've played out is where I'm like, well, like, can you just like wait until you're a little bit older to decide like if you want to change your body permanently? Talking about it like it's like a fucking tattoo or something. But where is that? Like, how do you feel about that? I mean, the reticence of people to allow young children, teenagers to take drugs to change their bodies.
Man. Okay. I mean, I do think we just generally have a really fucking weird attitude towards children. I'm going to start out with that. I do think like not, just to clarify, not many kids are talking about getting surgeries under 18. We do let kids get surgeries already. How many girls have gotten like a nose job for their birthday? Like, how many times do we let
but that makes them more fuckable though, like, right?
Yeah, you see, I forgot. This is the thing. We have to keep the children fuckable. That's the main and I
really don't want someone to clip this out of context. So I wish we could do like a sort of like vibe watermark here so that nobody can do this. But anyway, go on.
But no, I do think there is, and look, I mean, I do think a lot of these fantasies about like girls' locker rooms and shit like that is about older cis men being like, how do I fantasize about, I'm getting into a locker room and no one can stop me. And there's just all these vulnerable girls and, they can't say anything. I'm just like, it's just, that's fucking perverted, man. But the desire to think about it over and over again, I think is perverse, particularly as it often concerns underage girls. And I do think, when we talk about this, we're typically talking at most about puberty blockers. Like not that many people under 18 are on hormones. And if they are, it is something that, almost all of the time they're working with doctors. There's been a long process. It's again, it's not like some kid just wakes up and goes, I believe I am a woman now. And then it's just like, here's your estrogen, like fucking go for it. I think that's what gets lost in the debate, is that these are often decisions made with a healthcare provider, made within the kind of medical framework of understanding, dignity of risk, understanding, Gillett competency and the competency of the child to consent to these procedures. This isn't something that just happens off the top. And I do also think when we're talking about puberty blockers and we're talking about the risks of these interventions, people forget the risk of not intervening. And yes, all of these medical interventions have risk, like most things that we do with our bodies. I would also argue sports have a risk. Like, I played sports, I consented to do that as a kid. I got a fucking hell of a concussion where I couldn't do math for like 3 months afterwards, which probably, did more damage. And I shouldn't have been allowed to say, like, I'll go on the field without proper like safety equipment. We let kids do dumb shit already. But the risk of not intervening, the risk of forcing a trans kid to go through a puberty that they do not want to go through, like, on top of it, you're dooming them to 2 puberties, because then when you go on hormones, you go through puberty again. It fucking sucks. No one should have to do 2 puberties if they can avoid it.
I, mean, I had braces twice, so I understand.
Yeah, that's exactly the same. Why didn't you get it right the first time? What dumbass orthodontist did you have?
No, he scammed us pretty good. That's a smart orthodontist. Made me get it twice.
But like the risk to not intervene, the risk of putting a kid through a puberty to become the wrong gender, and the risk of like long-term mental health issues, the risk that also poses in terms of the way that fucks with your ability to differentiate yourself and socialize during adolescence, a critical period for all of that crap, to like figure out who you are. That determines a lot of your later like social success, but also your success in terms of like, imagining yourself as an adult, planning for all of those things. Instead, you're kind of growing up in the wrong body, feeling like you can't even imagine who you are, and like the distance that creates. There's no amount of therapy in the world that can compensate for that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely none. And in fact, like, yeah, there's people where depression co-occurs, but it's so much harder to treat that when everyone around you isn't willing to address or acknowledge one of the things contributing to that. I don't see how the risk to trans kids' lives, both in terms of like these cumulative effects over puberty, but also the suicide risk, I don't see how that is less of a risk than puberty blockers. If that's something that a doctor, like, again, someone's talking with their doctor, they think it would be helpful, they've, again, it's not just a one and done decision at will. How is that less of a risk?
Because I think you see a lot of promoted characters detransition, people who detransition and talk about how much of a mistake it was and how they wish they were never allowed to do it. Those stories get amplified considerably, but they are statistically almost non-existent.
I mean, like, they exist, definitely. I think I was trying to look this up last night, and don't totally call me on this because I'm sure there's different measures, but I think it's something like maybe 4%. And when you compare that with a lot of other medical procedures and surgeries, it's incredibly low. Also, a lot of people who detransition, it's not just, I wasn't this, I was forced into this. It's often, my family put so much pressure on me to detransition. There were so many like other social reasons. It's not that I'm not trans. It's just that going through that was too painful And those detransition stories are really fucking popular, but
Yeah.
it's, and I'm sure, there are kind of questions about how everyone feels about every part of, because we have this idea of medicalized transition as like this one solid thing. And people have the choice to go through as much of it as they need to or want, and they should be aware of like the risks at every point. But that's why it should be a conversation between them and their doctor. And again, when we're talking about these surgeries, that is very rarely, if ever, happening with children. That's not really
Right.
happening with children.
Well, the governor of the state of Florida begs to differ. It seems to be happening everywhere all the time. All the books, it's in all the books too. They're always
yes
mutilating children. They love, that's the thing, is they love the phrase mutilating children. They love to say that. It's crazy how often I hear that term.
And I think that's the thing, is children are this real, again, great site of fantasy and projection about the future, about what's natural, about what's real, about humanity, all those things. Children are a fantastic thing to project on. And I think more and more when we see children less as like members of society and more as parental property, but not as, individuals that can work, just as these kinds of extensions of a parent's ego, the more we're going to see their subjectivity kind of railroaded for their parents' projection. Because, like, what fucking future are we raising them for? Let's be honest. Like, what I'm more worried about with children is, like, what are we setting them up for in 10 years in terms of a life? How much agency have we allowed them to build? How much have we allowed them to become their own people? And how much have we provided them with a world that they can contribute to?
I don't think it's worse anywhere than in the United States in particular.
Oh God, yeah.
When you meet people from other countries and they're quite young, but they just have a kind of mature disposition, but Americans are so perpetually stunted. It's crazy when you which is why also age gap discourse in America is so funny to me, because it's just like, I don't think anyone in America should have sex before 30 at this point, if that's really what we're worried about. Because Americans, we are so embarrassingly childish, and it's like we want to be. We don't want to grow up.
No, and it's fucking weird as well, because there's that infantilization of women in conservative circles. I remember, an acquaintance from a relatively conservative Christian background. She had just turned 30, and she was like, "Yeah, I feel, I'm so worried because it feels like my life is older, and I'm, this tired, it's all done. I'm just old and ragged, but my cousin died of an overdose, so I guess I'm not that." And it's just like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, the only thing that can make 30 better is you're not your dead cousin. Like, girl. But it's this idea that there's nothing that you can have to offer as like a realized human being. It's just your vulnerability and your innocence and your ability to be someone else's property. That's the only fucking thing that's good about you.
Yeah, it's especially bad for women. Like, combining that with you guys, I forgot. I think it was you posted it, and it was someone saying that they, like, at a certain age, like, they want women dead. Like, we're worth like we're worth less than
Did I
anything.
post that?
I think you did. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I do. But I hate to keep on coming back to misogyny, but I feel like it's hiding under every corner of this, like misogyny, but also this idea of, like, children's bodies being, the property of their parents, and children not having any inherent rights. Yeah, I guess there's that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, yeah, what life do children have outside of your fantasy of them? And I think in America, it's not fucking much.
What questions did you want to ask me?
Why? Just I guess when you approached me for this, and I kind of understand it as your interest in, through your interest in sports. But what comes up for you emotionally as you think about trans people? And I'm asking less for like a logical reason or an explanation, but like, why is this fun to think about for you?
I guess it does allow for a kind of, I don't want to say masturbatory in the figurative sense, but it does kind of scratch the surface of like the nature of self. And I and where self and society meet in a much more tangible juncture, I guess.
Yeah.
So I've sports was always that thing for me too. It was all things in miniature are done through sports, and I think sports metaphors work best. And so trans women in sports just makes it much more interesting to me to talk about what it all means and whatever. I think there's also this idea I have of hyper individualization, and I think that trans identity is an interesting example of that to me. Like I was saying before, I can't prove that someone actually believes in God or not. And
Yeah.
talking about like people in religion, what seems harder and more like confusing to me than gender even. So I think gender like an identity is this place where you can kind of like get at like what someone actually believes, right? Where belief comes from. I also think a lot about in terms of like the newer notion of the self is this internal, like you are most yourself inside of your head. That's your true self, is like your thoughts in there, and not what you do. Because that to me is like the problem today, right? It's you are whatever you think you are, not what you do. And I think that the expression of gender in that way is interesting. It's like it seems difficult for trans people because it's like, how do you do a woman, right? And they're trying. There are lots of different ways, and we all see how it's fraught and maybe it doesn't exist at all. And so it's just like, well, how can you be something that there is no one right way to do? Or so I don't know. It's fun to think about. I like hope it's clear to everybody that I'm like very much a supporter of trans people. Like I'm totally fine with trans people doing whatever they want to do. Some of it's weird, but like some of what everybody is weird. So it's fun to think about. And I guess for me, it's also it's mostly fun for me to just see how other people think about it. I don't have like the strongest opinion, like for me, I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. But when I see other people's reaction to it, then I'm like, okay, now there's something here. There's something really interesting here that people have this outsized reaction to a 0.01% of the population. It's like, what's up with that?
So it's almost like watching other people's fascination as well. That's there for you.
Yeah. I don't think I have a weird thing for or against trans people. Like I have some trans friends, not here in Florida anymore, really. But I love their trans DJs are the best, So I don't know. It's just interesting for me to think about. And I hope trans people and my trans listeners don't think I'm like looking at them like some sort of human zoo, like a curiosity in that way. I don't know. It's just interesting.
It is. I will say there is this horrible thing that kept coming up in my going to like art school where they kept on being like, have you tried making electronic music? And I'm just like, I'm really bad at it and I don't like doing it. It was just like every
Maybe
other
you're not
tutorial.
trans then, actually.
Yeah, maybe this is the warning sign. But no, I also kind of I feel like it's only fair to ask, like, has your experience of gender, and I don't just mean this in terms of like, have you ever considered the possibility of being a woman, but like, has your experience of gender been this kind of smooth experience? I mean, you're tall, you're bearded, like you definitely, it doesn't seem like you've had some of the pressure that some people face, some cis people face, where it's like,
No,
oh,
it's
but
been pretty smooth sailing for me.
you've
Not
always
gonna
just
lie.
felt pretty comfortable with being a man.
Ye- Yeah, although it's funny, I call myself a boy. Like I don't even
Huh.
use I say boy more than man, even though I'm 38 years old. But uh I mean, I have had so much fun cross dressing. Like
Mm.
I do love for every Halloween for like 8 years in a row, I was a woman. And I would try and stay in character all night long. And I would have an absolute blast doing it. And I didn't feel like confused or anything. I was like happy to take it off at the end of the night. Like I was just like running out of steam. I'm like, oh, I can't keep being. Like one year I was Livia Soprano. I was Tony Soprano's mom. Just like wore a
Oh my
muumuu
God,
and a gray
amazing.
wig, and I was just
Amazing.
being as like mean as I possibly could all night long, and I had so much fun. So I'm just very I'm very comfortable. I'm not. I will wear women's clothing and like be like this. Like, do I look good? Like, does it look nice? Like, that's all that matters. Like, does it make my ass look fat? Good. But I don't. I don't think I've ever felt very confused about it because I'm also like not very obsessed with like being a man. I really
Yeah.
don't. I don't fucking care. Like, you can't. Like, I don't get in fights. Like, I don't get mad. Like, people can like try to emasculate me, and I'll be like, all right, dude. Like, I'm fine. Whatever floats your boat. I really don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel like a lot of the most masked people I know are the people who I feel kind of seem to feel that quite effortlessly, don't think about it much, and aren't too head up about it. And
What is there to
when you
even think about? That's what I'm like. I'm trying to like what do I? Well, I don't know. I guess for me, it's just like being a good person. Just like try to be a good
Mm,
person. That's it. Like I feel like there are things like, yeah, I'm tall. I'm a man, so there are certain social responsibilities that kind of land on my shoulders that might not on a woman. I recognize my privilege walking through this world as a tall white man. Like, I can
mm.
go almost anywhere and I'll be fine. Like, I'm deeply aware of that. Am I gonna not do it because I have like? Should I not use my privilege? Hell, I'm
Oh,
gonna use my
hell
privilege.
no.
Why wouldn't I? But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I just don't get. And
Mm.
I if someone like thinks I'm gay, I'm just like, cool, it's fine. Like, I make a lot of my followers think I'm gay for subscriptions. I gay bait all the time. It's super fun. And they love it too, dude. They're like so happy to be flirted. Who doesn't like being flirted with? It's fine.
Oh yeah, everyone likes a
Yeah,
little flirtation. Like,
it's great.
regardless, I think it's fabulous. But yeah, I think I just asked that because I think it's a it's a question that has to come up when we talk about trans people's gender so much. Like, but what of the cis hets? Like, what's happening there for people? Like, you know?
I'm probably not the best person to ask. Is the thing. I don't know. I like. Uh, I feel no need to defend anything traditional. I
But
don't.
I guess, is there a complexity there that you're seeing within the trans experience that you think, I guess, maybe gives you this or opens up this kind of breadth of discourse that you find engaging?
You made me really interested in what it means to be trans when you said that trans people like become religious. I think you told me that.
Not everyone. I've heard someone go from being a staunch atheist and then through his transition process was like, I have to believe in God now because I don't have another explanation for this and I feel God now. Like,
I'm jealous of that. That sounds great. And I would 1000% take hormones if I could talk to God.
I don't think it was the hormone.
Or whatever. I don't know.
I think it was the process of realizing this underlying thing. But I think I just go back to like, God, it's another friend of mine where like before I was like, God, you're a miserable cunt. And then in the British sense, not the American sense, Jesus fucking Christ. And then like, I see them transition and it's like, oh my God, you're so much happier and suddenly actually yourself and not like mad at the world. This is fucking lovely. And I think that's why it just becomes so like, obvious.
I see that with a lot of closeted guys I know. Like I see them suffering and they are doing all the things that like a closeted gay man does, which is like hates women in a really weird way, has sex with them like one time and then is like, I'm over it. Like, I don't ever want to talk to this person again. I'm like, that's kind of gay, dude. Like, don't you want to try a couple more times at least? I'll always give someone a solid 3 times. And then if there's no sparks, it's like, God.
What about a soft
Yes. Well, then that's on me, typically. If it's a soft 3, I'm lucky if they talk to me again. But yeah, I see these guys who I know are like most likely, at least bisexual. And I'm like, I used to be like, dude, just fuck a guy. You'll be way happier. Or maybe actually it might make you insane and violent. I don't know. That sucks for you, and everyone else too. But I don't know. I would love to have transcendent experiences in general. And fortunately, I can find it other ways. I don't have to go through a very socially unaccepted, intensive, difficult process to do that. But, if it makes him happy, God bless, like, that's great. Go with God. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Straight guys do love this though. Straight guy, and I think it's mostly like because they say everybody's a little gay or whatever.
No, please do explain your culture to me. I'm curious.
Straight men love doing would you rathers. I don't know if everyone does these, but I've never had like many women. If they do ask me a would you rather, it's like a much more clever like secret way to get it how I actually feel about something. But men straight up would you rather, it's like would you rather, and they're I'd say 75% of the time it's about gay sex and maybe involves money or something like that. But one of the would you rathers is frequently in regards to trans women, and like would you let like the hottest trans woman like fuck you in the ass? And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, if I'm put in that situation, maybe if they're super hot and I'm turned on, like I guess I would give it a go. But like this, and
also like the idea of let you'd have to fucking
like
beg
they all
for
want
that,
to.
man.
They all want it. That is the thing. The
hottest trans woman in the world wants like.
And
Greg.
the cis-het fantasy, and the cis-het would you rather's, everybody wants to fuck you. That's the thing. You're the most fuckable person on the planet. So I think that a lot of straight guys look at trans women, especially the really beautiful ones that are hard to clock, as kind of like safe ways to experiment, because everybody wants to experiment a little bit. Everyone wants to try something new. If you do it with a trans woman, it's not gay, dude. It's not gay. Okay. I mean,
I like this idea of like the attempt to cheat gayness. Like, how close can I get without being caught?
Yeah, cis-het gay guys get real Talmudic about gay sex. I'll tell you that.
Shabbat's gay. Like,
yeah, Shabbos gay. Seriously, like, yeah. Well, he stuck my dick in his ass, so technically, I didn't do it. You know, it's like the Mormon one. They're jumping on the bed too. It's not
but
sex.
I do think like for the men that like gayness and like the failure of their masculinity is something that they're quite worried about. Defining that line over and over again kind of satisfies an anxious urge to be like, well, where am I and how far could I go, and like, you know, where would it end? Well, I think I know a lot of like straight to bi-ish, maybe. I don't fucking know, man. I don't really feel that need to put a label on it. But who just don't fucking care and don't need to define this. And it tends to be because they're chill with themselves. Like, I think all of this is just an off-gassing of anxiety, honestly.
Yes.
Which I don't think is the most exciting interpretation of it, but I think it's also a very boring and transparent activity as well.
So yeah, I guess to wrap things up, it is boring, right? It's all so boring. Mostly it's so obvious, right?
Yeah.
It's too obvious. I wish there was something more. I mean, okay, I might do this for the introduction, but there is a serious like Zionist CIA psyop, I think, involved in this, especially with the involvement of Enes Kanter, who is a fucking CIA asset, like 1000%. He is like the face of the Gulenist movement in the United States. I'm gonna do this. I'll do an intro because I want to get all my facts right. But I think there is some legitimacy to these ideas that a lot of these leftist identity politics, they weren't like created by the Jews as they would like to have you believe. But I do think that they were amplified by intelligence in order to just be confusing as possible, because it is very confusing. And I don't think that it's a great politics.
I've got a lot of really fucking strong opinions about this. Okay. So, first thing, a lot of it actually starts to make sense once you're in the space. Like, it's like, of course, like any kind of specific vocabulary, if you're not in the field, you're like, why is there all this confusing language? And then the second you get into it, you're like, oh, because it's describing a thing and a process and an experience that needs language to describe it. So that tends to change when you're in queer spaces more, when you're like dealing with people trying to talk about their experience more. I do think there's this shift that happens around the AIDS crisis where in America, in, you know, Europe, you see this kind of sudden need to have to define yourself to this broader space and like take up identity politics, because the other option was to die en masse. Like, separatism was no longer a livable possibility. So there is that massive influence. But this is an argument that I remember having with a lot of like younger queer people, because one of the best examples of solidarity in the UK is the LGBTQ coalition with the minors. And there is a possibility for this to be a real social movement that kind of goes beyond identity politics, like we were talking about before, like, you know, blaming trans people for the way sports are kind of this golden ticket in a highly exploitative society, blaming trans people for the lack of like social trust and the dehumanization of like day-to-day experience. There is this like possibility there for kind of social action. And I guess this is where I do kind of agree with you. I do think there is an attempt to limit it as much as possible to identity and to like a queer identity, rather than seeing how a queer identity puts you at this juncture where you're joined by a lot of other people who kind of escape the market. And there's a great piece by Adrienne Piper called The Mythic Being, which was a performance piece where she kind of tried to dress up in between both genders and races as a mixed race person and someone who is questioning her identity. And, you know, if your queer theory and your queer politics doesn't include race, doesn't include class, like, yeah, you're full of fucking shit and it's not worth dealing with. That's my opinion. And I do think it's like it's sometimes used as a replacement for dealing with race and class.
Yes. I mean, I just were coming of age in college. It was 2007. I went to college, and it was before like woke. Really, like there was. I watched like Woke Ascendant, and I remember looking at this, and I was like, "This isn't gonna work. Like this just isn't. This is.
No.
It was so alienating." And I think there are some interesting people who make the case that it was done on purpose, that there was like a dial that they were twisting to make the focus on this very confusing, burgeoning ideology and identity, as opposed to what, you know, your classic Stalinists want, which is class consciousness, I guess, right?
Yeah. And there's definitely
so,
a hijacking of like Stonewall and all that shit, like, and trying to
It
move
was
away from the anti-police, like, you know,
super easily. I don't know what it is about queer culture, probably because like it is the culture, but it makes it much more easily corporatized, like commercialized. Like the fact that they are such like cutting edge culturalists that you can be rich, you know. It's not,
yeah, but
it works
it's
to
also,
their benefit.
you're such a minority, and you are trying to constantly convince this like majority culture that you're living in that you're worth not killing. And that's a difficult fucking balance.
There was someone who I love, and I was maybe a little flippant about it, but she told me that she and her fellow comrades, one of the radical things they were doing was they were basically making their own hormones in preparation for some sort of coming trans purge of medical availability.
Yep.
And I would be like, that's cool, like that you're like, you know, like DIYing hormones. But at the same time, I was just kind of like, that just is not a top priority for me and like the political movement that I think is necessary to change the world. I feel like that, to me, that seemed very like low in what we need.
In
And
what you need.
I mean, like we in that, like the vast majority of people.
But that's the thing. It's like, again, you're convincing the vast majority that your experience is worth it and worth existing. And I've heard some interesting arguments from friends of mine in communities under a lot more threat. And this, you know, this thing of like, we can't go to, you know, it's not a question. It's hard to go to the gay club when you're worried about being bombed. Like, it's like, you know, there are other concerns besides improving queer recognition in my community because our community is so under threat. That's not the fucking case in America right now. And also, I would argue that for a lot of people, these hormones are quite fucking necessary. Like when you start, it's not like you can just stop. Like just cold turkey. Yeah. Like this is a medical need.
Yes.
And then we start arguing whose medical needs are
and
worthwhile.
maybe it's not appropriate. I'm not the person to medically triage revolution. I understand that. However, I feel like you can't have it both ways, saying that trans people, like, there aren't that many of them. So these conservatives have built in this fantasy in their head that there's this trans takeover of society. And then also, I think because they're so few, then also prioritize them over, I think, other larger groups of people who are in other kinds of need. So I think that for me, it was just like, I'm thinking of it in this kind of like coldly, not cruelly. I'm not trying to be cruel about it, but I am just thinking, like, if in terms of like what needs to be done, not that I'm doing anything for the revolution. So,
Yeah.
but when I think about that, I'm like, that's an interesting, that just, yeah. I just, to
But
me, I see that like low.
I mean, I think
precedence.
I think your mindset's completely fucking wrong. And let me try to pill you on this.
Okay.
Cause I think it's not fucking taking anything away from you that they're focused on giving themselves some independence, trying to maintain their capacity to be medically fit to contribute to their communities. If, you know, to make themselves more independent in lieu of like a fascist crackdown. That's not taking anything away from you. And I would argue that people developing those skill sets and those networks, ultimately, those are resources that can be used for other things. Because it's like you're seeing it from this like all or nothing mindset. Like, these networks don't grow other things. They do. These kinds of networks of like trust, of like supply chains, of like capacities, of knowledge, those can contribute to fucking everyone. And the fact that these people are focused on this doesn't mean, like, we're not at this point where it's like all fucking hands on deck 24/7 for the fucking revolution. Like, most of us are fucking sitting on our hands doing jack shit. I would argue it's far more revolutionary to develop these alternate systems of kind of medical production than anything else.
That's a good argument, yeah.
I mean, you know, and again, it's this idea of like, well, you would never benefit from these things. I would argue if someone's able to like keep a lab space like that and figure all that shit out, and again, have those contacts, that's going to be a pretty valuable person to have around, regardless of whether you want estrogen or not.
That's a good point.
I mean, I think, but that's the thing. I think we're stuck in this fucking scarcity ass mindset where it's, you know, we're crawling over each other being like, you don't get shit because I feel like I'm not getting shit. And what if the bad thing happens, rather than like, well, let's see what more we can produce. Like, what do you think she should be doing instead? And then maybe you can do that.
I don't want to say it on mic.
Well, I assume it's growing a vegetable garden, and you're gonna have a lovely time doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because
like soap making factory, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, and I do think there is this like this idea that trans people or like queer people are conspiracy definitely dates back to Nazi Germany. And I would also say like queer people weren't let out of the camps after World War II ended. They stayed there.
Well, how did they make more of them then? You know?
I know, they just keep on fucking coming up. They just, regardless of all attempts, they keep fucking existing. But no, I mean, that's like, one of the
spontaneous
things.
generation turns out to be true.
Yeah, it really fucking does.
Yeah,
you can't. Yeah, they do seem to spawn a lot in England. Apparently, that was also part of the research from that German guy in the 1912. Apparently, it was generally like, yeah, there's a lot of homosexuals in England for some reason. Not sure why that keeps happening.
That's what I say every time I go there. Like, you guys are all gay.
But yeah, no, there's been that idea that queer people are just this which is kind of funny because I'm like, I feel like there's so many examples of queer people massively contributing to culture, wherever they are. It's kind of hard to, I don't know. I don't really get that, but
No, I think that it's not that queer people are some invention, but I think that I haven't read the book yet, but I think it was like Who Pays the Piper? It's about the infiltration of Marxist intellectuals in colleges and academics by the CIA. And I think that I think that they did manage to kind of manifest the seeds they planted in these academic circles. I think truly manifested in the late in the 2010s. Like I think that it did. I do see a lot of that stuff hurting. I think a more cohesive leftist movement, and I think that there is a lot of a massive alienation of what would be a leftist populist movement by academia. I think it does hurt.
Yeah, and I do think there is definitely like questions of like huge issues of classism and racism within the queer community. Like it's not exempt in any fucking way.
Dude,
And
there's so many evil gay guys. What's up with that? Fascism and gay guys,
God.
like white men are fucking gay white men are fascists.
Oh God, it's just a man that doesn't want to fuck you. It's so much worse. Because at least when they want to fuck you, there's this like little layer of like trying.
Well, I'm going to save this conversation for an upcoming one because I do want to do a series about like what the fuck is fascism, and I think I want to do a whole one about homosexual fascism because there's something there. There's some rocks I want to pull up and look underneath there and be like, what's wiggling down there? Because
I'm finally gonna have to read male fantasies. I'm finally, oh God. I think it's like 600 pages.
Well, you read it and then you report back to me because I'm not gonna. Laura, thank you so much for tolerating this conversation. We'll never do it again. I promise. This will be the one and only time.
No, but I'm glad you had someone on, and I'm glad you gave me a platform to say my piece about how stupid this all is. Because I do think there's that balance of being like, God, do I have to have this fucking conversation again? And then being like, well, if we don't, the right wing are the only people fucking talking about it. So,
I know that's the other thing, and because I know like some good leftists who are a little confused about it, myself included. So thank you for being my intellectual beard, so that other people can't get mad at me.
They'll just be mad at me. And to every like trans person I've worked with who happens to listen to this and is like, oh my God, you got so much wrong. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried.
They're feds. All right, Laura. Love you very much. And don't give up your DJ career yet.
No, I don't make me be a DJ. Forced transition to DJ. Yeah. That's the real social problem.
Dude, we've been talking about that fucking fantasy, the forcible transitioning, dude. That's so what a fantasy.
Oh my God.
All right, next. Well, actually, so we're gonna have another episode about forced transition. All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, now here is my interview with the anonymous athlete about competing with trans women and how she feels from a woman's perspective about this whole debate. There's no video, so just close your eyes and imagine two very good-looking people having a pleasant conversation. So what's your name and your social security number? JK. So we're not going to give away who you are, but can you give me some of your athletic credentials so people know who they're dealing with?
Yeah. So I started swimming when I was 8 years old. And I started playing soccer when I was probably like 4. I played soccer throughout high school, senior year of high school, and I swam at a D3 college. So I was a college Division 3 swimmer.
And you had you didn't know Leah Thomas, or okay, let me ask again. Did you know Leah Thomas personally?
I did not know her personally. I know someone who was on the team with her when she was at Penn.
And
And
what
then I personally swam against 2 different transgenders during my time in college.
and what was that like?
It was tough. It's weird. I think I always believe that the NCAA is always going to be one step behind everything. That's just kind of how the world is going to work. But it's a tricky situation because I'm very open and very honest with, I believe that everyone should be comfortable in their body. And if you're comfortable being a man, you should be a man. If you're comfortable being a woman, you should be a woman. But I also believe that, like, being a woman in sports, men will always be stronger, will always be faster, will always be better at sports. It's just kind of how it plays out. So being a 5'10" woman, I'm already over the average height, and I'm already going to kind of have an advantage. So when I'm going up against a 6'2" woman who was a man at one point, that's kind of hard for me because I know that it's a lose-lose battle for me.
Did you lose to them?
Yes.
By how much?
I believe it was like 2 body lengths.
Is that significant?
In swimming, that's significant. Yes.
Right. And this was D3.
Yes.
Right. So how did it leave a bad taste in your mouth? I mean, tell me in the aftermath of competing against trans
Yeah,
women.
it was just like, it's not fun because you can't really say anything because it'll look bad on you. And then also, like, before the meet started, it's D3, so it's very small. There's never ever like police, and I remember that day there was police escort. There was multiple police officers in that swim meet, and it just brought a lot more attention, but not in the good way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the attention we don't want, and I felt like I couldn't stand up for myself because it was a lose-lose situation for me because I couldn't say anything because there was not enough guidelines at that time that NCAA had out. So what they were doing technically was right. So I couldn't say anything, but I technically was never going to win that race because I was always going to be behind them.
Did you suffer any, do you feel like you suffered any consequences? I mean, did it stop you from being able to compete further? Or did it prevent you, or, I mean, there's not like a much of a professional trajectory into swimming, right? Like the best you can hope for is the Olympics or coaching, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I knew I was never going to go to the Olympics. Like, that was never, I knew my ability, and I knew that, like, my ability was never going to get to the Olympic trials or the Olympics. But, like, in D3, there we have our championships. And, like, I do know that, like, there was a chance for me to race this person in the championships. And if I lost by that much in a dual meet when I'm not suited up and I'm not in my tech suit, it was only going to get worse in that championship. And I'm lucky enough that she chose not to swim that certain race. So I didn't have to race her.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to win.
Did she not choose
like-
for like political reasons, or
No, she just chose a different event.
Okay.
But like she still swam and she still won.
First place?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Was everybody kind of soured by it?
yes.
Right.
But again, there were people who chose to speak on it, but it was also the point where NCAA, there wasn't enough guidelines and there wasn't enough rules and regulations about it that no one could say anything and no one could stand up about it because what she was doing was technically right. And it's the same for Leah Thomas. Is like
Right.
people tried to speak out about it and people did speak out about it. But like technically what she was doing at the time was okay because she wasn't breaking any rules.
I mean, weren't there rules in place for Leah Thomas at that time? I mean, so Leah Thomas swam after you did.
Yes. So she swam, I feel like she swam a couple of years after me.
So they had updated the
They did
guidelines.
update rules and they did kind of modify them through her.
Right. So yeah, so you're right. It's the same thing with drugs too. Like these anti-doping bodies are always a step behind the development of the drug itself.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is like people take drugs to like very directly get a competitive advantage, whereas I don't think people are becoming or transitioning for an advantage, right?
No, and that's kind of where it's like the tricky part and where that's where like my stance is kind of hard because I'm like, how many trans athletes are there? Like there's not going to be so many. So it's like, and like I'm very like again, like I'm open, like you be who you want to be. Like I'm very like I'm open for that. But it's also like she's not transitioning so she can go be a better swimmer.
Which is what conservatives will say.
Yes. But like she was a better female swimmer than she was a male swimmer.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I struggle with. And it's like she knows that like what is she, 6'2", 6'4"? Like she is this like the wingspan, like she's going to win and she's going to do better no matter what because of her body type.
She's going to do better, but yeah, she did place in 5th, right, with the lovely Riley Gaines.
Yes, like she wasn't this outstanding male swimmer, so it's gonna kind of correspond that she's not gonna be this outstanding female swimmer, but she's gonna be a better female swimmer than she was gonna be a male swimmer.
Correct.
So it's like that's where it's kind of hard because it's like the rules kind of changed because they saw what was happening with her. But it's like I'm all for doing what you want, be who you want, feel how you want. But it comes to a point where it's like, okay, well, this is now unfair for the people who are like, it's unfair for us because it's like she's obviously going to be better than the majority of the people.
Did you see amongst your colleagues and friends and other athletes a kind of growing resentment as a consequence of this?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's hard. You have this love for the sport because you grew up on it, and then it's like the media gets to it and tries to bring this negative power to it, and you don't want to take that in. And then it's like you want to let them like you want to let Leah Thomas swim. You want to like keep like your love for the sport, but it's like it does get really hard because it's like you have to think that this is unfair and like it's not the right thing to do, but what is the right thing to do? Like cuz like in my brain it's like it's not fair if she swims, but then it's also unfair if she can't swim at all.
Right.
So it's like I don't know what the right thing to do is. So it's just like negative and then it's like it brings out the bad side in everyone. So it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a very clear-cut answer. And I do feel like that in these very nascent stages of trans rights, because it's only been a topical conversation for what, like the past 10 years or so? Did you ever compete against a trans person growing up?
I was in college, in my last year of college, so 2020.
Right, but like when you were like doing like your swim programs and playing like club soccer, it was never an issue.
No, never.
Right,
The first time I experienced it was in 2020.
right. Yeah, it seems like one of those things that obviously in like lower league or like amateur uh competitions, it's not an issue. Like I would play basketball with any trans person. I don't give a shit. Like anyone's welcome to play.
Yeah.
But I guess it does change when it becomes professionalized and regulated.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's like I grew in my time growing up, like swimming was huge in our neighborhood. So it's like everyone had like these small clubs that you would swim for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't experience having a transgender swimmer there, but like it wouldn't have been a problem. Like you can just like go, like I don't think it would be a problem, but like once you get to the college or professional league, that's when it becomes a problem.
And that's only it probably because instead of just like local personal glory, there's just more at stake. There's more to
There's
benefit
more like
from.
there's more at stake. There's more media outlook on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's more people like there's more eyes on it. It's kind of like what's going on with the WNBA right now. Like
Yeah.
there's more eyes on it. There's more people that want to speak on it, especially with what's going on in politics right now. Like more people want to have their opinion and like say what they want to say and they want to be right. And it's just like whereas like in a lower level league, like a kids league, like it's just like just go out there and swim.
Yeah,
and like or go like just go have
unless
fun.
you have those like insane parents who like
Yeah.
but that's not that's their fault.
That's few and far.
Yeah, few and
like
far
you're gonna
between.
have,
Yeah.
yeah.
So to end things, I
Mhm.
just want to say fuck Riley Gaines, right?
She's a terrible human being.
Can you give me a little bit of gossip people might not know about Riley Gaines?
I can just give you my opinion. I think what she's doing is terrible. I think her book and her little book tour is terrible. I think she's just trying to I think if she won or she got second and Leah Thomas won, it would be a different outlook. Do I agree if she got second and Leah Thomas won, she could go on this book tour and go do what she's doing? No, but I would side with her a little bit more on her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
The way she's reacting for the place that she got and the place that Leah Thomas got. She's dragging it on. It's time to move on. She's not like it's not right. She's a bad human being. Like she just is. She is.
Is
like,
that the
and it's
general
just-
sentiment amongst other swimmers too? Like they don't really respect her, or what?
I would say so. I
Yeah.
mean, people, it's not like it's like a big topic of conversation, but like when you bring it up, it's everyone's like, yeah, she sucks
Mm-hmm.
because she does, because she's using Leah Thomas and she's using her not great performance to try to make herself famous and get herself a platform.
Right. Oh, and one last question.
Mhm.
Can you imagine a moment when it won't feel unfair if a trans woman places first? Is it
In
possible?
the world that we live in right now, no.
No, it'll always feel inherently unfair.
Yes.
So even if
Which, like, I hate to say that
Yeah.
because I don't want to feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, take everything out of sports. Like, I would love for them to be able to compete. And, like, I know there's been talks of, like, having them their own league, but, like, there's just not enough of them to have their own league.
Right.
But, like, in the world that we live in and how divided politics are, it's never going to be fair.
But like you personally, would you ever feel like competing against a trans woman would have been fair? Like if they've
I don't think I would be
hypothetically-
vocally about it, but I think inside I wouldn't feel okay about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that no one should be demonized for feeling like something is unfair. I think that that's a perfectly reasonable feeling to have. I mean, I've felt like when I've played against certain people in basketball, it's unfair, that they have
Yeah.
X, Y. So there's always like these post hoc sort of feelings about losing. We're always looking for reasons to explain our loss. I do think that a trans woman is a lot more legitimate than me saying that, like, oh, the referees were biased against us. It's unfair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be if I were still swimming and I were to lose, I don't think I would be vocal about it. I think I would kind of take it just because of the way the world is, but I wouldn't feel good about it. And like it's just different now.
Yeah, well, nobody also likes a sore loser anyway, no matter what.
Yeah,
nobody.
like I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't
res-
want to, especially what Riley Gaines has done in the media
Yeah.
that she's gotten. Like you don't want to be portrayed as her.
No,
But like I
she's
don't ever see the world being okay with a transgender in sports winning and being okay with it.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is, like, at some point, like, a trans person has to win, and we like that you can't like, okay, you can compete. We'll allow you to compete, but you can't place first. It's kind of a funny deal to make with them.
Yeah, that's kind of like and I don't agree with that because like if they're gonna compete, you got to let them compete, and you got to
Right.
let them. Like if you're gonna say they're gonna compete, then they can get first and they can win and they can break the records.
Right.
Do I like that? Do I feel good about that? I don't really know, but like if you're gonna let them compete, you can't make deals with them because you're not making deals with the other people.
Well, thank you for giving us this insight. I think it's very important to hear. Yeah, let's just hope that there is a imagined world where we can figure this out.
I know. I hope so because it would be much easier.
Agreed. All right. That's the end of the
Great.
show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.